Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. This week we're going to have some fun with a 1941 play by Joseph Kesselring turned into a comedy called Arsenic and Old Lace from 1944, starring Cary Grant, Raymond Massey, Peter Lorre, and Priscilla Lane. And this is directed by Frank Capra. So where does our story begin? Well, it begins in Brooklyn, New York with the Brewster family. Now our main character is Mortimer Brewster, who's a writer. He's recently fallen in love with his neighbor, who's a minister's daughter, Elaine Harper, which is played by Priscilla Lane. Now they just got married on Halloween Day, so Mortimer and Elaine are getting ready to pack and head out on their honeymoon. So Elaine goes next door to her father's to pack, and Mortimer visits Abby and Martha. And these are his aunts who raised him in the old family home. Anyway, when he gets there, he's looking for notes for his next book, and he finds a hidden corpse in the window seat. So he approaches Abby and Martha about the situation, and they cheerfully say that they're responsible. They post a room for rent sign on the house, and they take in old bachelors who are suffering. Then they give them a glass of elderberry wine spiked with arsenic. And then they bury the bodies in the basement. So now they're up to 11 bodies. So while Mortimer is digesting the whole situation, Mortimer's brother shows up, Jonathan, played by Raymond Massey. And he has with him his alcoholic apprentice, who is a plastic surgeon, Dr. Herman Einstein, played by Peter Lorre. Now, Jonathan is also a serial murderer, and he's trying to escape the police and dispose of his latest victim. And it looks like he's found the perfect spot. And it's funny, because in the movie, they keep calling him, gee, you look just like Boris Karloff, because of the bad plastic surgery. Well, Boris Karloff is the one that played the part in the play. So Elaine is all packed and ready to go on the honeymoon, and Mortimer's trying to get control of the whole situation. He's trying to find signatures for papers to lock everybody up in the sane asylum. Anyway, does Mortimer get the situation cleaned up? Do they get to head out on their honeymoon, or does there end up being 13 bodies buried in the basement? This is a really comical movie that moves along at a really fast pace. If you like movies like Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein in 1974, then I would be more apt to put this one on your list as well. And it was actually a big hit as a play. This movie was supposed to be released on September 30th, 1942, but because the play was doing so well, it was running for 3.5 years. So this movie got changed to 1944 for its release. And I'm glad they gave it to Frank Capra. He was responsible for Cary Grant getting this part. They were looking at Bob Hope as one of the hopefuls, but I'm glad they got Cary Grant. He really did a good job of it. And Frank Capra was a big director in his day. I'm a big fan of his. He did Mr. Deeds Goes to Town in 1936. He did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1939. Meet John Doe, 1941, and the big hit, It's a Wonderful Life, in 1946. So, a little more history and a trivia question coming up next. Cary Grant was just hysterical in this movie. We're going to do a little more history on Frank Capra and what life was like in 1944. So what did Frank Capra do after filming? Well, he went to war. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Capra enlisted. The Corps even came to the studio to swear him in. He was also granted time to finish the film before he headed into service. Cary Grant also aided in the war effort. He donated his salary, which was somewhere between $100,000 and $160,000, to the American Red Cross, to the British War Relief, and to the United States organization. So what was it like for life back home for people that didn't go to war? Well, here's some stats that you might find interesting. The average cost of a new home was $3,450. The average wages per year was $2,400. Average monthly rent was $50 per month. Cost of a gallon of gas was 15 cents. Loaf of bread was 10 cents. And here's a big one for me. Old Spice shaving soap, $1. Now, buying a car was a little different story back then. There were no cars built in the USA between February of 1942 and October of 1945. The factories were changing over to make everything from airplanes to artillery shells. In fact, car makers produced 13% of all Allied war material during World War II, including a couple of big companies. Willys and Ford together built about 650,000 Jeeps. There were also a lot of famous people born back in 1944, and just to name a few, Danny DeVito, Diana Ross, George Lucas, Roger Daltrey, Joe Fraser, Gladys Knight, Tony Orlando, Jerry Springer, and the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, was born January 9th, 1944. And the trivia question, kind of an interesting one. Was there an interesting name put on a tombstone in this movie? Yes, there was. And I have to explain. First, this was the largest set Warner built on their studio at that time. It was pretty impressive too. Frank Capra built a miniature Brooklyn Bridge with small cars and trains that moved. But there was a spooky graveyard in this movie, and on one of the tombstones was an interesting name. What was the name? Well, it was Archie Leach. Well, who was Archie Leach? Well, that was Cary Grant's real name. I'd like to give out a big thank you to all my subscribers. It's a warm welcome for me with a new channel. We're going to be back next week in living color. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you back next week.